Welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, owner of Play in School, Rich Prado. Today we're heading out to the frozen tundra of Indiana to meet with Greg Vogt from PRP Baseball and the PRP Mambas. Greg, how you doing, man?
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You got it. Looking forward to doing a little bit of learning from you today and catching up, hearing about your background, but it's probably worth starting where you were when I talked to you, or when we were like exchanging text messages the other day. You were going Clark W. Griswold style in the minivan, or the ride with the nice wood paneling on the side. You had your whole family thrown in the back, and you were moving from Florida to Indiana in the middle of the winter. Will you just like give the brief background, and then we'll sort of paint around the edges to fill in the details. But what was the impetus of the move from Florida to Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, it was about 4 trips in 3.5 weeks, 2 of them driving with either kids or animals, to get everything up to Indiana, into a rental house, beat Santa Claus himself, and have beds and a house for a kid to sleep in. So it was a lot, but luckily we made it. It got colder every stop, every time driving up, and now we're here. Now we got snow on the ground everywhere.
Yeah, literally everywhere. So PRP is, and for those of you guys who haven't been to the website, prpbaseball.com is the website. And the Twitter is a little longer than that. If I remember correctly, it is PRP Baseball 101, at PRP Baseball 101. And you can find Greg at GVOGT31. Connect with him over on Twitter. So PRP, I like that what the PRP stands for here is passion, resilience, and process. I love those, and would love for you to sort of speak on how did you come up with that as a name for your organization, your facility, everything else?
Yeah, so I mean, at first it started as more of an arm strengthening class. A lot of more on the aggressive side of lawn toss and arm care and developing velocity, and it just turned into something bigger where I was trying to find something that maybe had a little catch to it. It had the same things that I knew were important to not only myself, the way I try to go through my life, but also the athletes that we expect to be in our program, and just kind of that message that you want to send. And ironically enough, I had written down a bunch of words that I would like to try and find a way to include. And I think at the time, 4-year-old, yeah, he was 4 at the time. His name is Parker, and he came over and he chose the ones that had the P at the beginning. And so we started off with 2 Ps, and I was like, okay, well, there's RPP, which is a great company up in the New England area. And then I was trying to think of another way to wrap something else into it. And I was like, you know what, we're going PRP. And so it literally started off on a note on a desk in a 4-year-old. But
that's
yeah,
amazing.
Pretty cool to get started. And where we got going with it is, more so on the pitching side in the first couple of years. And, all of a sudden you start to see it be able to grow more than that, which was always my goal, to make it more than pitching and more than arm strengthening and health and all those things. So I knew it needed something more than just either myself or my name into it. And I wanted to mean more than that. So, I'm glad where it's at right now, because it's crazy how many different logos and shirts that we've gone through, and just trying to make it the best we can.
Well, the choice of resilience in that name is so appropriate with your background, and I'm going to let you talk on your background a little bit more, but just the getting guys sort of ramped up on the arm side, on the pitching side, ramped up, or the comeback from an injury, and just the game of baseball being such a game of failure so often, that resilience is such an appropriate term. Why don't we pause there and take a second and sort of go backwards and allow you to kind of talk about, your background and how you got from where you started to where we are today.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been about 9-10 years of training pitchers. I got into actually after my senior year of college. I got a phone call from a really good high school coach in the area, Justin Keever, about being his pitching coach. And at that time, I was just coaching a 14U travel team as a college summer job and trying to find ways to get into the game. And honestly, it was an opportunity. I don't know if I was ready for it right at the beginning, hopping into it with kids that were literally 4 years younger than me. And I learned a lot in those first couple of years of just learning different pitchers, what they do well, what they don't, how I could push more of a narrative of what a good pitcher does. And honestly, it took 2-3 years before I feel like I had an understanding of what are the things I expect out of pitchers, what are my goals as a coach, to have a staff that does things, on a daily basis that leads to success on the field. And that quickly grew into like having guys in a very competitive high school area, to becoming private lessons, to becoming a travel coach, at that time for the Indiana Bulls, and working our way through those teams. I just got around a lot of good players. I didn't have much of a guidance on like what a throwing program was or how to get ready for season. And it just started as that. And some of the luckily best arms in the area needed a plan and just needed somewhere to throw. So we started this group training with guys that were, wanting to throw harder and be ready for season, get recruited, obviously, when it was a little bit different back then. And that led to me having a company that led to me leaving teaching, leaving the school system, leaving a travel organization, leaving assistant scouting with PBR, like a lot of different things that really changed, and more committing to the company of finding the best way possible to affect more players and also be more efficient with our time to grow the rest of the company. Which is just a long-winded way of saying, like, it took every single step of the way, from being in the private sector to the team sector to more the scouting side, and then also getting more into being the owner side. It's been fun. I mean, we've had so many players make it to a level that they never thought they would get to, and now a lot of them want to come back to either work with us or use me as a reference or use us as a base to their coaching. And it's nice now hearing it. We have 4 or 5 of our main staff members are guys that we've trained for years. And that's good, because that means it's a little bit more than just the place they go for their pitching, or the guy that helped them with their mechanics one time. Like it's more of a brand and more of a culture, which has been the goal of it the entire time.
That was a solid explanation. It's so funny. Like you look at that route you took, and there's definitely a handful of places where it would have been easy for you to just sit still. Teaching's a great gig, You saw a bigger opportunity, moved on. PBR is a great gig. If you want to work in the baseball world, PBR is a great gig. You could have probably hung there forever. Obviously, you have that entrepreneurial gene and wanted to do your own thing. The quote that stood out to me in that statement was, "What a good pitcher does." What does a great pitcher do that's different than the other guys, than just the average guy?
To me, it's a good pitcher is someone that's always ahead, someone that's always on the gas pedal, someone that's in control of a lineup, in control of an at bat, aware of the situation. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that. And the funny part about, like, obviously that quote and the background that I have is more of a baseball player turned into coach, is not everyone, for a long time, most people have seen us as it's all about velocity. It's all about arm strength. You should put yourself at risk to throw harder. And it humors me because I never threw hard. And I spent my entire career being frustrated by guys that threw harder and got more opportunities or more looks than I did, but then I was out pitching them. And to me, it drove me nuts that like guys would make it to, the next best level, the travel team or something like that, because of a 15 pitch, blow it out, show off your stuff. Hopefully a couple pitches land in the strike zone, and not like looking at a guy's season and being like, okay, this guy is giving up next to no hard contact. He is not walking people. and he is facing the best pitcher on the other team, and he wins those games. Like, I want that guy. And it's not necessarily always about that. Like, as far as developing, you want to be good on the field, but you're also always changing. You're always growing, and your mechanics are going to change. Your arsenal is going to change. Your team, your coaching style is going to change. But I do think there's not enough value into that. And we're guilty of it. I mean, we don't post nearly as much about the kid that we trained that throws 78 but went 7-0 for his JV team. Like, unfortunately, that doesn't make the news. But the kid that goes from 88 to 94 and now has draft interest sure does get a lot of attention, and he does sure get a lot of, opportunities because of that. He may go walk the house as he's getting used to his added velocity and arm speed and body moving faster, but he's still going to have more opportunities at the next level because of his base of velocity. He's going to get a chance. So it's referring back to the question. Being a good pitcher is all the things that make you go deeper into games and get more outs, because baseball is about getting outs. And if your velocity is higher, there's legitimate data that shows that you have a better chance of that, but it does not mean you're going to get it. So that's why I hope, as we continue to grow this brand and the culture of PRP, it is about throwing harder. But by throwing harder, it means we're probably moving better, which means we should throw more strikes and we should be healthier. So it's all encompassing into one main focus of being a better, stronger athlete.
Can you tell when a guy walks in? You don't know the kid; he just walks in. Young guy walks in to the place. Can you tell just from a few things? Maybe his demeanor, his look, his vibe. Can you tell? Can you tell right away?
Pretty much right away. Almost every kid, you have a very good idea on what their interest level is, what their commitment level is, their attention to detail. And honestly, we just had this conversation with the staff the other day, because I'm, over the last couple of years, working with older athletes, and a lot of them are at a high level. And I come back, and one, the kids that were in youth PRP are now seniors in high school, and that feels like crazy. But number two, these kids can't talk. They walk in, and it's just like, is he going to say something to me? Do I have to talk to him? It's like, yes, you do. You have to communicate. What do we need to do today? How do you feel? What are we working around? Did you break up your girlfriend? Did you lose in Fortnite? Did you ace your test? Like, I'm dealing with a bunch of different personality traits here. I need you to talk to me. And most of the time it's like a very quick, acronyms and abbreviated words, like they're texting their buddies. And we're trying to make sure we get some more actual thought process into this, so that we can make the best decision for their day, their throwing program, their lift. Now, that being said, there are certain kids at every level that walk in, and it's right eyeball to eyeball, and it's, Coach, how you doing? I need this today. Is there anything else I should do today? I want to work on my breaking ball. And then we start that conversation, and those are great. And not that every kid needs to be loud or outspoken on their feelings of their training that day, but I do think the presence of an athlete who knows how their body is, what their schedule is, and also wants the coach to help them, it means they're invested, which means we're probably going to get somewhere pretty quick.
It is amazing how in 2025 the average teenage kid struggles to communicate. I was going to say outside of his age group, but I'm not sure they communicate verbally in their age group. There's so much texting and Snapchatting and stuff. It's so unusual when you find a 16-year-old boy who can communicate with, whether it's an adult or a younger kid, that it really makes them stand out, like in a major way. That you talk to a kid and he gives you, like you said, you get that eye contact, and he's able to carry on about a wide variety of topics. Wow, those kids, man, those kids jump off the page.
Right, more so than ever. They're more used to talking to a camera or on a phone with their fingers, and don't really have to follow up their idea with more thought. When you're always doing it that way, which we're all to blame, then what used to, you had to walk in, you had to talk to them. You had to just text about before the lesson started. Like, I'm not going to do that. We do make our senior team, or we'll talk more about the Mambas here, but our senior team, they have to text me every week. What do they need for the week? What do they need for the day? Tell me if you're coming or not. I don't want to hear it from mom or dad. Like, you're going to have to talk to a college coach in 7 months. let's communicate.
That's right.
So yeah, it's all levels, but even some of the top guys that may not be there physically yet, just the presence of mind and communicating is a separator now.
It's cool. I mean, honestly, it's like they walk in and you're already getting a vibe for them. You can see it. I mean, the way kids move around really sends a message. The way anybody moves around sends a message. But once they get up on the hill, I mean, I've heard you talking about, movement, arm patterns, all these types of things. That's your sort of bread and butter, right? The bio stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, our biggest focus is movement quality. It's movement ability. Like screening them, making sure we have an idea of what their body's trying to do. Making them move more efficiently is the goal. Whether it's their swing in our weight room, if it's obviously on the mound. That is the bread and butter, and will always be the main focus, because that's going to keep people on the field and it's going to keep people advancing to the next level, which is it's just a never-ending journey. You're always searching for that better movement here and the faster movement there, so that you're more on time with the baseball, whether it's throwing or hitting it.
Yeah, on time is such a key thing. Now, so you had this cushy teaching job, and you started training guys. You had a role with PBR, and eventually you wanted to go out on your own. I'm on your bio page on the website here, PRP Baseball, and it says looks like you started this thing in 2018. What'd you do? Did you go just find a big old warehouse and throw some turf down and move in? What'd that look like? What did that feel like? How did you accomplish that? Were you on your own at that point, or did you have some coaches with you? Talk about that sort of foundation story to PRP.
Yeah, so I mean, we partnered with the building that we're in right now, which is now called Mojo Sports Complex. It was Finch Creek Fieldhouse, with a group that's had several buildings in the area, whether it be basketball, baseball, pickleball, you name it. And when that partnership happened, I just ran the baseball training inside the facility. So most of the public got pushed into our programs if they were looking for that type of thing, doing lessons, running group training, whatever it may be. But completely on our own, or on my own. And then we had some hourly workers come in that, paid them by the day to come in and help local high school pitching coaches, hitting coaches. We ended up hiring an S&C coach when we got a weight room. Like slowly adding key pieces to it was huge, because it just allowed us to have more kids and more offerings. We offer infield classes, catching classes, sports performance memberships. Obviously our hitting classes are a big hit. The big thing with us is it started as just a group training program from October to February. Now you can do stuff year round, on site, remotely, and play on our team. It's grown a lot in that sense. We're just trying to make sure that like you said, our bread and butter being movement quality and player development, from a pitching standpoint.
So, eventually you ended up getting a pretty cool role with a big league organization. And I want you to speak on that for, here in a second. Actually, why don't you sort of tell that story, who the organization was, what you did there, and how that came to be.
Yeah. So actually it's right around Thanksgiving 2022 and, 22. And, a coach reached out to me that I talked to in the past about some of the studies that we've done on med ball velocities and throwing velocities. And we had talked a little bit here and there, but this one was a little different, where it was happy Thanksgiving. You have time for a call soon. And it was yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even know at the time that he had taken a job with the Toronto Blue Jays as a pitching coordinator. Well, took it as a development coach and worked his way up to coordinator. And so that quickly turned into interest in an interview for a job. Wasn't even sure which job at first. Obviously had tons of different roles and job types, some that require you to be in Florida full time, and some that, it's more seasonally based. And, about 2.5 months later, we decided to accept that job. The interview process is pretty long with most organizations, but, we had just had our third son, Jackson, in October. So like it was already peak madness of having a third kid run around the house, already working full-time jobs and talking about moving across the country, which we did with a 10-week-old.
Oh my God.
So it was a lot of fun, but I will say the best part about getting into the organization is just the people that you're around. I mean, they're very, very smart coaches, obviously some awesome players that you get to not only work with, play catch with, talk to. There's some really cool relationships there built. And my role was awesome because it had a lot of different things to it that kind of kept me moving. The main role being the rehab pitching coach, where the focus was on the guys that were injured, helping them move better, get built back up to be ready to, be activated on the roster they were on before they got hurt. And obviously in today's world, it is a difficult job, as they all are, because of the roster sizes and the amount of guys who are on an injured list that come back and just their runway gets short. Whether it be pre-existing or something that just the amount of time that they've missed and the game moves by pretty quick from level to level. So that was the day-to-day where, helping them write their plans, evaluate them, work with our PTs, our medical directors, and just make sure that those guys had the things that they needed to be in the best shape when they were ready for games. We had a guy who's the top prospect that was in there for 897 days. Another guy that was in there 750 days with 2 Tommy Johns. And he comes back harder after 2 TJs than he did 3 years ago.
Wow.
There's a lot of cool stories there that are fun on the medical side, but obviously the frustrating ones are the guys that just never get back to being right, and how much that kind of wears on you as a coach. Not only myself, but you get them back and they look great, but then they get a phone call and says they got to find another job. And walking those guys out of the building after you spent every day with them, talking through a very difficult part of their career, just not getting a long enough window to get right. And honestly, we've myself included, I've been wrong. Our org's been wrong. We've been wrong. Every team's been wrong, where sometimes you let a guy go and then all of a sudden they get to a different org and they figure it out and now they're a big leaguer. So it goes both ways, and I thought that part of it was fun, but it was challenging because my background really was with healthy guys. I just had a way of teaching healthy guys that what this organization and interview staff thought I could implement with the guys that weren't throwing. Drill work, arm patterning, lower half mechanics, things that could maybe help them move better while they were not throwing much. So that part was fun. The other parts were, I don't have to go down too far into this, but I worked with our Dominican Republic team, all their pitchers and the pitching coaches, awesome staff, awesome group of guys. Obviously, a crazy thing down there in the DSL, just all the young kids going through that system quickly. Some get a real opportunity, and some, end up back trying to find an adult job.
How much time were you down? How much time were you in the DR?
I spent 1 week my first year, and then 2 weeks, 2 different trips for a week each the last 2 years.
Okay,
and
so it wasn't a ton.
Correct. Yeah, I would go down during their spring training, which is after Major League spring training, and then I would go back down during the season.
I was wondering if you
focus.
I was wondering if you got duped into moving to Florida with your 3 young kids and wife, and then ended up actually having to be in the Dominican for half the year. That would have been less than ideal. So, okay, I needed you to tell that story. And we could probably talk about your experience with the Blue Jays and, going to the DR and working with these, these pro guys for a long time. But I wanted to circle back. We got a lot of guys who are in your position currently listening to this, guys who maybe want to open a facility, start an organization. And so I definitely didn't want to spend the entire time talking about the Blue Jays, but it was really important to sort of lay that sort of groundwork. You had just started the business in 2018, and then like a couple years later, you take off for Florida, and you're gone. But your business ends up growing, for best I can tell. Like, I've been following you on on Twitter a long time. Looks like your business is doing better than ever. Can you talk about how you were able to grow that business from afar?
Yeah, I mean it's complicated. There's no easy way to say, because I don't know. There were times I felt like we were doing a great job of it, and times I felt like we were not doing a great job of it. A couple things got held up a little bit for sure, like expanding our Mambas teams. It was a goal before leaving. That was hard to do from afar, just not being around players and coaches as much. And then our youth programs, our intermediate programs, they need to continue to grow again where they were a couple of years ago, where, you know, we emphasize that stuff a lot more from a key development, the foundation of mechanics and throwing programming for our young groups. That's been just more from a staffing capability. We've lost 4 coaches to college coaching or professional coaching in the last 2.5 years. And that's aside from
that's
me.
actually
So,
great.
So
That's, you know what I mean? That's a great sign when your staff gets recruited away to sort of like arguably bigger and better things, right? That's awesome.
Right.
I think
that's the goal. And I tell these guys that they're usually young, fresh out of college, you know, former player that want to stay involved. And, you know, some of those guys take off. I mean, they absolutely take off. And some guys realize, like, wow, this schedule and dealing with dads yelling over your neck during a pitching lesson just aren't fun. Like, I would rather go work a normal job. So it's good because I like giving them the opportunity, because that's all I was given. I got very lucky having an opportunity to coach with a good coach and a good system, and I learned a lot, and it's helped me a ton. And so, like, giving them that foundation of a resume, an opportunity to learn. If you can run a track, man, do a little bit of coding here and there, you have a job. You have a job in baseball. You know, you can learn the coaching aspect or making code into English, making the coaches understand the things that you know. So we try to do that for our coaches. And, you know, every time they call and they're, you know, all worried about, I'm going to yell at them and be upset with them. I'm like, no, man, like this is what you said you wanted. Like, congrats.
Yeah, totally a side note, but I always thinking about when if your boss truly loves you and they truly value you and you're ready to move on from whatever organization you're with, man, they should be the happiest people. Now, they might be sad to be losing you, right? But also they should be pumped and thrilled for you. And if they're not, did they really love you and value you to begin with? That's a totally side thought, but worth verbalizing.
For sure.
Yeah, so you eventually, like we already talked about, you threw your kids back in the minivan, you headed across the country, you stepped down from your role with the Blue Jays, and now you're back on site and, you know, taking over the day-to-day. What's that transition been like for you personally? Because you were sort of managing from afar and you had on-site managers, but now that you're back in the building on a daily basis, what's that been feeling like?
It's been awesome. I mean, again, working with professional teams is great, but there are a lot of things you have to do to make a change or communicate something directly to a player on their development plan or what it may be. And the nice part is when I walk in those doors and kids come in to train, like, they're already invested in you. They want to learn from you right now. So it's just, they're sponges. So you have a chance to work with them right away. And it may not be understood right away. It may take time. And you may be wrong. I've already had multiple times I've talked to a kid on the training floor, and I told him something. I tried to work him through a different position, and he went the wrong way. And I'm like, okay, that coaching stuck. It's not your fault. Let me try this. And, like, working with these guys more hands-on is just something that I really, really do enjoy. It builds a relationship with the kid, and you're hopefully with them long enough for it to be truly impacting to them. And that's where I've really gotten, you know, back on my feet on that sort of side of it. That being said, like, I am now working with kids that are really far away from the big leagues. Like, they could be the best player of their high school or the state, and they're still really far from being a big leaguer. So, like,
sure,
understanding that when a guy throws a really bad bullpen and you try to help him, it's okay. Like, he's a kid, he's got a lot going on, and there's enough things that he's got to figure out to be a really good pitcher. And I'm just used to watching been very blessed and around guys to just like you watch a 25 pitch bullpen and it's like they didn't even give effort and it was amazing. And it's just that level and difference of how you talk to a 13-year-old and, a 24-year-old who's been playing, baseball full time for a living for 6 years. There's the different stages. So that's been an adjustment, obviously. And also bedtime has now gotten way later because I was used to way early mornings to like done middle of the dates. And now it's like, all right, what's the last group? 8:30. Why did we do that?
Yeah.
So we get a little later in the night now.
That's so true, man. That's so true. I actually picked up the phone and called a guy the other day, and I definitely woke him up at like 9:30 in the morning, and I was a little shocked. And then he's like, "Hey, man, I'll call you back in a little bit." He did. He called me back. He was like, "I was at the facility until 2 a.m." I'm like, that makes sense, man, because guys are in there working, so you're not going to leave.
Yep, that guy's grinding right now. If he's doing that, that's awesome.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, we call this travel ball talk. We've talked about a bunch of things besides travel ball. Let's focus on the Mambas for a little bit. You started PRP 2018. You were just doing training. Looks like I'm on the bio page. Looks like you started the Mamas in 2021. Usually the story is something like a dad's like, "Hey, we've got a bunch of guys, or we have a team over here. You're training my kid over there. Can we just bring our team to you?" Is that the quick version, or is it something a little bit different than that?
Well, that did happen, but we never said yes. We've turned down that option a few times because of just several reasons that we can talk about the downfalls of travel ball and what it's kind of become at certain places and certain levels. And not to knock that way. Sometimes you have a really good group and they all come aboard and it goes great. It's better for the kids on that team.
It saves you from having to run that first tryout if you can get 12 kids to just roll on over.
Yep. So the story's pretty cool, and I like telling it because it's fun now that those guys are like graduating college and still talk about it at times, or at least are curious to how they're doing because they were the first ones. But we had some of our top high school guys working our summer camp, paying a little side money to come work with the kids during the camp while we helped some of the college guys during their training. And we come back from lunch and they're joking about this kid's travel team or whatever. He's like a 10-year-old. And they're like, "Why don't you have a travel team?" And a couple of the kids were like, "Yeah, why don't you have a travel team?" And I was like, "Because you guys don't usually play your senior year, and I'm not dealing with the high school age stuff with all the good programs in the area." And like, "Well, let's just make an 18U team." And I was like, "No." You're like, "Well, what if we all did it?" Okay, yes. Like, if that's what we're talking about, then absolutely. If you're going to fill the team and, whatever. So our first group basically rostered itself, named it, and picked the colors. And now it's out.
That's cool. That's cool.
And it happened during a summer camp.
I bet those kids gave tremendous eye contact and could have conversations with adults.
Yes, they did then, and they do now, and a couple of them have already gotten picked up. They're playing indie ball, playing pro ball. Like, that group was not only very good on the field, but I mean, college ball was a mess. College summer ball, was a mess after COVID. Some leagues were open, some weren't. Locally, we had the Grand Park Summer League open up that same year because players need a place to play.
Yeah.
And so these guys were honestly worried that they weren't going to have somewhere to go play before they went to campus. And that's where I told them, like, I don't want to deal with all the things that go into 18U summer because of that. And when they took care of the roster part, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously I'll coach a bunch of the, guys we train and keep the schedule short and compact, not run around the whole country. Let's do it. And then, we put some noise out there the first summer. Our offense was just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I think we averaged 10 runs a game. And we went third in WWBA 18U, and we won every game but 3, and 2 of them were in Georgia. So it was a really fun group, but that quickly, as you can imagine, put, a stamp on our back, like, okay, what are they going to do now? So for the next 2 years, we just ran the 18U the same way. I coached it. with Seth and a couple of our other staff members, and it was very, very successful. It did get harder as we got kind of through the time of college summer leagues opening back up. More college coaches were deciding to shut down their seniors, get them on campus early, things like that. So rostering is always a challenge. Our goal, especially my goal, is to work with these college coaches so that they know that they're going to get good reps. They're going to get to train while they play. They're going to get professional level coaching, and we're not going to run them out there to dry. Like they need a break, they get a break. If they're not going to break 75 pitches or they're going to throw 12 innings in the summer, then they're shut down. So we've made several agreements where, we've had a ton of Cincinnati guys, for just an example, and Indiana State. And we know the pitching coaches, and they work with us to allow those players to play to a certain inning or, a certain amount of starts or, 3 starts, 2 relief appearances. And that's what we do. We follow the rules that we set with the coach. And so that's helped us kind of pick back up that trust in the college teams and advisors even. I mean, last year, Ethan One comes down for one game. We trained him for 5 years, but, they didn't want him to throw in the summer. And he's like, I really want to throw just one time. I want a jersey and I want to pitch for the team that I've been a part of for years now. So he comes down and throws after having an incredible spring, hits a bunch of draft interest 2 weeks before the draft. And, that was a huge day for him because he hits 94 in a quarterfinal game against a loaded USA Prime team. And there are scouts there watching. Actually, they were watching Cruz Schoolcraft, who's going to get picked very high this year. And, long story short, like that was the goal, to work with the teams. Recently, especially as I was working my way back up here, we wanted to expand it to other teams. So this is our first year, being year 5, that we have another team on top of the 18s, which is a 15-year-old 2028 grad team. So first year we've had 2.
Yeah, that is definitely way different story than I was expecting. It is way more common to start with a 9U team than it is to start with an 18U team. Pretty cool though. Pretty cool. Right. So have you already run your tryouts for that 16U team? You think it's your roster set? They look like good group of guys.
Yeah, so we have a 15U team that has 13 players on it, all pretty local. We have a kid that trains with us remotely from Penn, but it's all in state, and they should be good. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a first-year program. A lot of guys from different teams that are playing together for the first time. There'll be some growing pains, I'm sure, here and there, just like everywhere, but the goal is to run that team and carry it through. So over the next 3 years, it should build into attracting more players, improving the overall talent. We believe that our training of the players that are on the team, because we get that included, are going to get better. So we're going to help our players as much as we can so that they don't, get pulled to another team or can't make our own team. So That's always been the goal. Is if we have players on travel teams that we train, we believe they're going to get better because we're watching them train. We're helping them.
Yeah. I want to ask one of what I call my standard questions. I know we're running a little short on time here, and I'm watching the clock for you. But I thought I'd give you a chance. I'm curious if you have. I have a feeling you're going to have a pretty solid answer. I'm skipping to my last, what I call standard question. What is one change you think could be made in travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact?
Yeah, and just first of all, I sent you a text a little bit ago. I'm good to go a little bit longer if we need to.
Okay.
As I mentioned, they'll be okay. But to that point, like, man, there's so much that goes on in travel baseball these days that, not only over-promising, underselling, underperforming, from just a development, a training sense. I'm as competitive as anybody, but making sure that keeping the priority in the development side has got to be something that's at the pillars of that team, of that organization. I think a lot of people get it wrong when they start pulling entire teams from other organizations and throwing a jersey on them and calling them your team. That doesn't mean the same to me as I think it does some people, which is okay. I take value in what you're wearing. Are they helping you? Are you just wearing their jersey in the summer, but you're training with everybody else? You're still playing that team. Yeah, you're still valued that team, but like, I want to have my hand, our hands, our group's hands on your development more so than just coaching you for 7 weeks and a few winter practices. And that's the foundation of what we're trying to do from a training sense. And we want that to be manageable by parents and players by just including that training, all one cost, get on the same roof and the same coaches so that you can benefit from it more. And that's not for everybody. That's been my goal, and that will still be the goal no matter how many teams we have.
Good deal. I dig that a lot, for sure. Yeah, it seems like a little bit of a better model when the kids are training together versus they just show up for the game and the coach, fills out a lineup card. So yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. And stick with it, stick with it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Neat thing is, you don't have 100 rosters that you need to fill out. You got a couple teams, 2-3 teams. It's you know what I mean. So you're going to be able to be selective with what you're doing, and
right.
moving at a good pace. Do you have any parting words for any parents, coaches, players that might still be listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the investment in baseball. It's not only challenging; it's difficult at all levels. Now, baseball is competitive, and can ruin your weekend with a 7-year-old all the way to an 18-year-old. And I'm currently going through that now. I have a 9 and a 7-year-old that are competitive and love the game of baseball already. And watching them either struggle or have success, or struggle with the game, and one day, next day the game's as easy as it gets. It's just they're learning so much more about it by having fun and competing on a baseball field than anything else is worth, whether it be the trophy, the win-loss, the team, the pitching coach, like just making sure we keep baseball at a youth level especially, but even high school baseball. They're learning so much, and it's going to impact the rest of their life, whether they win that tournament or they play at college and pay for it, or get NLI money, or get drafted, or an injury ends their career. Like, no matter what, if they're bought in, they're doing the right things, they're working hard, they're listening, you're going to have more rewards than you can ever imagine from a long-term perspective for that player. So just keeping that the main thing for everyone, no matter the team, no matter the training organization, whatever. I think that's probably the most important thing, I hope, not only from our players, but everyone listening or everyone out there that is trying to figure out how to manage it. Like, keep that the main thing.
Awesome. PRPbaseball.com is where you can connect with Greg. Greg, I appreciate you doing this with me, and we should try and do it again another time. I feel like there's probably hours and hours of more stories that we can pull out of you that we didn't get to today. Will you do me a favor? I'm going to stop this recording, but don't hang up.